My family branded me a failure, whispering I'd never amount to anything. I sat silently at my brother's FBI ceremony, unnoted, until the director locked eyes with me and muttered, "Hold on, you're the legend." The room froze. Even my mother couldn't find words. The air in the Missoula FBI field office was thick with the scent of polished wood and nervous anticipation. I stood at the edge of the ceremony hall, my navy blazer blending into the crowd, my heart pounding like a war drum. My sister Lily, radiant in her crisp FBI uniform, was about to be promoted to senior special agent, and the room buzzed with the pride of colleagues and families. But I wasn't here to bask in her glory. I was here to keep a promise to myself, one I'd made years ago in the shadow of my family's doubt. I, Claire Morgan, 34, was no ordinary guest. I was a ghost in their narrative, a failure they pitied, a daughter who'd never amounted to much. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know I was a deputy director in the CIA's clandestine service, a woman who'd stared down death in alleys from Prague to Baghdad, and I'd planned to keep it that way, until the moment Director Robert Hayes, a man I'd briefed in Langley just weeks ago, strode to the podium and shattered my carefully built world. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hayes began, his voice commanding the room, "today we honor not just those on this stage, but the unseen heroes who protect our nation." His eyes scanned the crowd, and I felt a prickle of dread. "Don't do it," I silently begged, angling my body toward the exit. I'd chosen civilian clothes for a reason, no medals, no insignia, just a nondescript blazer to blend in. But Hayes's gaze locked onto me, and his face lit with recognition, and I must acknowledge an extraordinary presence among us. Deputy Director Claire Morgan, whose work on Operation Silent Aegis saved countless lives. The room fell silent, a collective intake of breath. My family, seated 3 rows ahead, froze. My father, Daniel Morgan, retired sheriff of Carbon County, turned slowly, his weathered face a mask of confusion. My mother Ellen clutched her purse, her eyes wide with disbelief. My brother Ethan, an FBI agent with a swagger to match, gaped like he'd been slapped. And Lily, my sister, the star of the day, stared at me from the stage, her new badge gleaming, her expression a mix of shock and something darker, betrayal. The word deputy director hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled, and I knew, in that instant, my secret life was over. Let me take you back to where it all began, to the rugged heart of Red Lodge, Montana, where the Beartooth Mountains cast long shadows over our family's legacy. The Morgans were law enforcement royalty in Carbon County. My great-grandfather had been a deputy during the gold rush days, gunning down outlaws in saloons. My grandfather rode with the Montana Highway Patrol, his name etched on a plaque in the state capitol. My father, Daniel, served 30 years as sheriff, his badge a symbol of unyielding authority. And Ethan, my older brother, carried the torch into the FBI, his career a source of endless family pride. But for the women, our role was clear: marry well, raise strong sons, and keep the home fires burning. My father used to say, "Morgan men protect, Morgan women nurture." That's the way it's always been. I never fit that mold. At 8, while other girls played with Barbies, I was sneaking into Dad's study, poring over his old FBI manuals and Cold War espionage memoirs. The pages smelled of dust and ink, and I'd trace the words: counterintelligence, dead drop, exfiltration. My pulse racing like I'd stumbled into a secret world. One night, Dad caught me, my flashlight illuminating a diagram of a Soviet cipher. I braced for praise, expecting him to see the spark in me. Instead, he laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound that cut deeper than any blade. "Spy games are for men, Claire. Go help your mom in the kitchen." I was 8 years old, and that moment branded me. It wasn't just rejection, it was a challenge. I'd prove him wrong, not by arguing, but by becoming someone he could never dismiss. High school was my proving ground. Red Lodge High wasn't exactly a hotbed of ambition, but I threw myself into everything: debate team captain, coding club founder, ROTC star. I stayed up late memorizing military history, running extra miles before dawn, my breath fogging in the Montana chill. My teachers saw it, calling me a force of nature. My guidance counselor pushed me to aim for the stars, but at home, my achievements were footnotes. Ethan's FBI Academy acceptance was the main event. Lily's cheerleading trophies a close second. My straight A's? Nice, but don't get cocky, Dad would say, barely looking up from his newspaper. Mom would pat my hand, her voice soft. You're so smart, Claire. Why not teaching? It's stable, perfect for a family. The real blow came senior year. I'd worked myself raw to apply to Georgetown University, dreaming of their international relations program, a gateway to the CIA. When the acceptance letter arrived, I clutched it like a lifeline, imagining Dad's pride, Mom's tears of joy. At dinner, I slid the letter across the table, my heart in my throat. Dad set down his fork, his gray eyes narrowing. Georgetown? You'll crash and burn in a place like that, Claire. It's too big, too cutthroat. Mom reached for my hand, her voice pleading. Why go so far? You could stay close, meet a nice boy, start a life. Ethan, home on leave, smirked. Sis, you cried during Saving Private Ryan. You think you can handle DC? Lily, 16 and silent, watched from across the table, her eyes flicking between us like she was studying a chessboard. I pushed back my chair, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I'm going. I've earned this. Dad shook his head. You'll be back by Christmas, mark my words. That night, I sat on my bed, the acceptance letter creased from my grip. No one celebrated, no one hugged me. The house was quiet, the weight of their doubt pressing down like the Montana sky before a storm. I made a vow then, staring at the moon through my window. I'd never come home defeated. I'd build a life they couldn't touch, a legacy they couldn't diminish. It was the first time I realized success might mean walking away from the people I loved most. Georgetown hit me like a freight train. The city was a far cry from Red Lodge's sleepy streets. Honking taxis, crowded metro lines, and classrooms filled with kids who'd grown up with trust funds and private tutors. I was the Montana girl with a chip on her shoulder, outworking everyone to prove I belonged. Late nights in the library, internships at think tanks, and a double major in international relations and computer science consumed me. By junior year, I'd caught the eye of a CIA recruiter, a sharp-named woman named Sarah Kane who saw something in my relentless drive. You've got grit, she said over coffee in a DC diner, but this life isn't for everyone. It's shadows, secrets, and choices that'll haunt you. You in? I didn't hesitate. This was my chance to step into the world I'd dreamed of since I was 8. I signed the non-disclosure agreement, my hand trembling with excitement, and swore to keep it from my family. They'd never understand. Back in Red Lodge, the narrative hardened. Dad told neighbors I was chasing some desk job in D.C., his tone implying I'd already failed. Mom sent letters filled with local gossip and hints that I could still come home and settle down. Ethan, now an FBI rising star, called to rib me about pushing pencils while he chased cartel leads in Miami. Lily, starting college, stayed quiet, her emails polite but distant. I wrote back sparingly, my responses vague. Work's fine, busy. The truth was too big, too dangerous to share. I was training at the farm, the CIA's covert facility, learning to pick locks, withstand interrogations, and fire a Glock under pressure. The first time I faced a simulated torture scenario, Cold water, blaring noise, an instructor screaming in my face. I nearly broke. Dad's voice echoed in my head. You'll crash and burn. I gritted my teeth, pushed through, and earned a nod from Sarah. You're tougher than you look, Morgan. My first mission came at 24, a low-level op in Eastern Europe, shadowing a suspected arms dealer in Prague. I was green, my cover as a grad student flimsy, but I soaked up every detail. The weight of a burner phone, the rhythm of a tale, the adrenaline of a dead drop. Then it went sideways. My team was ambushed in a narrow alley, gunfire cracking like thunder. A sniper's bullet grazed my shoulder, blood soaking my jacket. I dove behind a dumpster, heart hammering, and radioed for exfil. Sarah's voice crackled through my earpiece. Stay sharp, Claire. You're not dying today. I didn't. We got out, the arms dealer neutralized, but I still see that alley in my dreams. The moment I realized this job could end me. Back home, no one knew. I flew into Billings for Christmas, my shoulder bandaged under a sweater. My cover story, a government analyst job, locked in place. At dinner, Dad held court, boasting about Ethan's latest bust and Lily's FBI Academy application. When I mentioned a work trip, he waved it off. Paper pushing in D.C., huh? Don't bore us, Claire. Ethan grinned, tossing a dinner roll my way. Stick to filing, sis. Leave the real work to us. Mom changed the subject, asking when I'd meet someone nice. Lily, as always, said nothing, her eyes studying me like she sensed the lie but wouldn't call it. I smiled, nodded, and let them believe I was small. It hurt less than fighting for their respect, that I was climbing. By 28, I was a case officer, running assets in hotspots from Istanbul to Seoul. My ops were textbook, recruiting informants, disrupting terror networks, feeding intel to Langley that shaped policy. In Istanbul, a deal went bad, and I was taken hostage by a rogue militia. For 6 hours, I sat blindfolded in a basement, their leader barking questions in broken English. I stayed calm, spinning a cover story, negotiating my release with a mix of charm and steel. When my team breached the compound, I was already free. The leader disarmed. Sarah met me at the safe house, her grin fierce. You're a natural, Morgan. They'll be writing about you in classified files someday. My family's narrative grew uglier. By 30, they decided I was struggling, my silence proof of failure. Mom whispered to aunts about my anxiety issues, blaming my stressful desk job. Dad told his old sheriff buddies I'd tried too hard and burned out. Ethan, now a supervisory agent, joked I was probably fetching coffee for real spies. Lily, starting her FBI career, was the golden child, her every step celebrated. At a family reunion, I overheard Aunt Karen sigh. Such a shame about Claire. All that potential, wasted. Mom nodded, her voice heavy. We just want her to be happy. I sipped my beer, my jaw tight, and said nothing. The truth, my role in stopping a terror plot in Paris, my commendation from the Director of National Intelligence, was locked behind clearance levels they'd never touch. Then I met Alex, a Defense Intelligence Agency analyst with a dry wit and a mind as sharp as mine. We bonded over late-night debriefs, our shared understanding of a world where truth was a luxury. When we married in a quiet D.C. ceremony, my family came, looking out of place among my colleagues. Mom asked what Alex did, her tone implying I'd married up. We're both in intelligence, I said vaguely. Dad pulled Alex aside, his voice low. Claire's always been stubborn about this government stuff. Good to know she's got someone who gets it. Alex, to his credit, just smiled, but later, in our hotel room, he frowned. Why do they think you're failing? You're one of the best operatives I've ever seen. I sighed, the weight of years spilling out. They've got their story, Alex. It's easier to let them keep it. At 33, I was named Deputy Director of a covert CIA division, one of the youngest ever. The promotion came after a grueling op in Baghdad, where a car bomb rocked my convoy, killing my driver. I dragged a wounded colleague to safety, my ears ringing, shrapnel cutting my arm. The mission succeeded, disrupting a major ISIS cell, and Langley took notice. The ceremony was small, held in a secure room. Alex, beaming as my new title was pinned on. I called Mom, hoping for a flicker of pride. "That's nice, dear," she said. "But when are you settling down?" Dad grunted. "Deputy Director? Sounds like a fancy title for more paperwork." I hung up, my chest tight, and vowed to stop trying. Lily's promotion ceremony was different. She'd risen steadily in the FBI, her path textbook, her achievements loud and public. When the invitation arrived, I hesitated. Attending meant risking exposure, but she was my sister, and some part of me still hoped for connection. Alex urged me to wear my CIA credentials, to show them who I was. I shook my head. "It's Lily's day. I'm not here to steal it." I chose a blazer, my hair pulled back, and drove to Missoula alone. My stomach knotted with dread. The ceremony was a blur of pomp, flags, anthems, speeches about duty. I sat near the back, avoiding eye contact with my family. Dad, in a suit, radiated sheriff pride. Mom fussed with her scarf, whispering to neighbors about Lily's amazing career. Ethan, in his FBI jacket, swapped stories with colleagues. Lily stood tall on stage, her badge gleaming. I clapped when her name was called, a genuine smile breaking through my guard. She'd earned this, whatever our history. Then Hayes took the podium, and my world tilted. His words, "Deputy Director Claire Morgan," hit like a shock wave. The room spun, faces turning toward me. Dad's jaw dropped, his fork clattering to the floor. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Ethan's smirk vanished, replaced by a scowl. Lily's eyes locked on mine, her face pale. I wanted to run, to disappear into the Montana night, but my training kicked in. Stay calm, control the narrative. I stood, forcing a smile, and nodded to Hayes. "Thank you, Director. I'm here for my sister today." My voice was steady, but inside, I was screaming. The aftermath was chaos. My family cornered me in a side room, their voices a barrage. Dad's face was red, his sheriff authority cracking. "What the hell, Claire? Deputy Director, you've been lying to us for years?" Mom's eyes brimmed with tears. "How could you keep this from us? We're your family." Ethan crossed his arms, his voice cold. "No way. You're running ops. This is a mistake." Lily stayed silent, her gaze piercing, like she was recalculating everything she knew about me. I took a breath. Years of silence breaking like a dam. "It's not a mistake. I'm Deputy Director of a CIA division. I've been running ops for a decade. Prague, Istanbul, Baghdad. I stopped telling you because you never believed in me. You called me a failure, a paper pusher, a disappointment." My voice rose, sharp and raw. "Every time I tried to share, you shut me down. So I built my life without your approval." Dad stepped closer, his voice low. "You think you're better than us? Sneaking around, laughing at your old man?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "I wasn't laughing, Dad. I was surviving. You told me I'd crash and burn. I proved you wrong, and you'll never know how much it cost me." Mom sank into a chair, sobbing. "We thought you were struggling, Claire. We worried about you." Ethan shook his head. "There's no way you outrank me. No way." Lily finally spoke, her voice quiet but cutting. "You let us believe you were nothing. Why didn't you trust us?" The question stung, but before I could answer, my phone buzzed. "A secure line, urgent." I glanced at the screen. "Immediate recall, threat level critical." I looked at my family, their faces a mix of anger and hurt. I have to go. This isn't over, but I can't stay. As I walked out, Alex arrived, his face tense. Trouble? He whispered. I nodded, my mind already shifting to the mission. Behind me, I heard Dad's voice, softer now. Claire, wait. But I didn't turn back. The Montana sky was dark as I stepped outside, the weight of my double life heavier than ever. What had I unleashed? And what was waiting for me on the other side of that call? The Montana night was a shroud, the stars swallowed by clouds as I sped away from the Missoula FBI field office, my phone's secure line buzzing like a live wire. The screen glowed with a single word: critical. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, as Director Hayes's voice echoed in my head. Deputy Director Claire Morgan, whose work on Operation Silent Aegis saved countless lives. My carefully guarded secret, the armor I'd worn for a decade, had been ripped away in front of my family. Their faces, Dad's disbelief, Mom's tears, Ethan's scowl, Lily's betrayal, burned into my mind. I'd spent years hiding my life as a CIA operative to shield my achievements from their ridicule, but now the truth was out, and the fallout was only beginning. Worse, this urgent recall meant something bigger was brewing, something that could make a family feud look like a Sunday picnic. I pulled into a deserted gas station lot, the neon sign flickering like a warning, my burner phone connected to Langley's encrypted network, and Sarah Kane's voice crackled through, sharp and urgent. Claire, we've got a situation. Operation Nightshade's been compromised. One of your assets in Moscow just went dark, and we've got chatter about a mole in your division. You're needed in D.C. now. My stomach dropped. Nightshade was my baby. A covert op to disrupt a Russian cyber weapon that could cripple U.S. infrastructure. A mole? That explained the media leak I'd been dodging, the journalist who'd somehow gotten wind of my identity. Someone was playing a dangerous game, and I was the target. Wheels up in 2 hours, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Any leads on the mole? Sarah hesitated, a rare crack in her steel. Not yet, but it's someone close, Claire. Watch your back. The call ended, and I sat in the dark, the weight of her words sinking in. A mole in my division meant betrayal at the highest level, someone I trusted. And now, with my family reeling from Hayes's revelation, I was exposed, vulnerable in ways I hadn't been since that sniper's bullet grazed me in Prague. I glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see my father's weathered face, his sheriff's glare demanding answers. Instead, I saw my own eyes, tired but resolute. I'd built this life, deputy director at 33, one of the youngest in CIA history, despite their doubts. Dad, the retired sheriff of Carbon County, had called me a paper pusher at Christmas dinners, while Mom spread rumors of my stress disorders to explain my silence. Ethan, my FBI agent brother, mocked me as a failure, and Lily, my sister, basked in their praise as the true Morgan successor. I'd stopped sharing my career, my ops in Istanbul and Baghdad, my marriage to Alex, a DIA analyst who knew the real me. But tonight, the mask was off, and I had no idea what came next. The drive to the airport was a blur, my mind racing between the mole, the compromised op, and the family I'd left in that conference room. I could still hear Dad's voice, raw with anger. You've been lying to us for years. Mom's sobs. We're your family. Ethan's disbelief. No way you're running ops. And Lily, her silence louder than words, her eyes accusing me of betrayal. I'd told them the truth. I'd hidden my rank to protect myself from their dismissal. But the hurt in their faces lingered. As I boarded the CIA jet, a sleek Gulfstream waiting on a private airstrip, I pushed it all down. Feelings could wait. Nightshade couldn't. The flight to DC was tense, the cabin filled with analysts and operatives. their faces grim. Sarah met me at Andrews Air Force Base, her gray hair pulled tight, her eyes scanning me like she was checking for cracks. "You look like hell," she said, handing me a tablet with encrypted files. Hayes' stunt in Missoula didn't help. I grimaced, scrolling through the data. Didn't know my family was there. But the timing's suspicious. First the media leak, now this mole. Someone's trying to burn me. Sarah nodded, her voice low. "Nightshade's too critical to fail, Claire. If that cyber weapon goes live, it's lights out for half the country. Find the mole, secure the asset, and don't trust anyone." Back at Langley, the war room was a hive of controlled chaos, monitors flashing, analysts shouting updates, the air thick with coffee and fear. I took charge, my deputy director badge a weight on my chest. The Moscow asset, codenamed Sparrow, was a Russian coder who'd infiltrated the cyber weapons development team. His last transmission, 48 hours ago, hinted at a breakthrough. Then, silence. Chatter suggested he'd been compromised, possibly by our mole. I assigned teams to trace Sparrow's digital footprint, cross-section internal access logs, and monitor Russian comms. But the real problem was trust. Every face in the room, veterans I'd worked with for years, could be the traitor. As I briefed the team, my phone buzzed with a text from Alex. "Family's blowing up my phone. They're at our place in D.C. Want me to handle it?" My heart sank. They'd followed me from Missoula, chasing answers I wasn't ready to give. I typed back, "Stall them. I'm in deep." Alex's reply was instant. "Be safe. Love you." I pocketed the phone, shoving down the guilt. Alex deserved better than a wife who lived in shadows, but he'd signed up for this life just like me. The first break came at 3 a.m., a faint signal from Sparrow's burner phone, pinging from a safe house in Moscow's outskirts. He was alive, but the message was garbled, mentioning a package and a hunter. I ordered a covert extraction, dispatching a team led by Agent Mark Reynolds, a grizzled operative I'd trusted since Istanbul. But as the team prepped, a new threat emerged. A hacker group, ShadowNet, claimed responsibility for a cyber attack on our servers, nearly exposing Nightshade's ops plan. I'd faced their kind before, in a brutal op where they'd tried to dox me, but this was personal. The attack's signature matched files accessed by someone in my division. The mole was moving, and fast. I called Sarah into my office, the glass walls frosted for privacy. "We've got a leak and it's internal," I said, sliding her the cyber attack report. "ShadowNet's working with someone here. Reynolds' team is en route, but I don't trust the chain of command." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You think Reynolds is the mole?" I shook my head. "I don't know, but I'm going to Moscow myself. If Sparrow's got the package, I need to see it with my own eyes." Sarah grabbed my arm, her grip iron. "Claire? You're deputy director. You don't run field ops anymore. If you get burned, Nightshade collapses." I pulled free, my voice steel. "If I don't go, we lose everything. Cover for me." The decision was reckless, but I'd faced worse. In Baghdad, a car bomb had ripped through my convoy, killing my driver, the blast so close I still felt the heat in my nightmares. I'd dragged a colleague to safety, shrapnel tearing my arm, and finished the mission. This was no different. I boarded a covert flight to Helsinki, then slipped into Moscow under a false passport, my cover as a Canadian journalist. The city was a maze of gray concrete and watchful eyes, the air heavy with diesel and suspicion. I reached the safe house at dusk, a crumbling apartment block where Sparrow was holed up. Reynolds' team was already there, their comms patchy. Something felt wrong. Inside, Sparrow was a wreck, pale, trembling, clutching a USB drive he called the package. It held the cyber weapon's source code, enough to neutralize it, but before he could explain, the safe house erupted in chaos. Gunfire shattered the windows, Russian mercenaries breaching the doors. Reynolds shouted orders, but his team was outmaneuvered. I grabbed Sparrow, diving behind a couch as bullets tore through the walls. My Glock was steady in my hand, training kicking in. "Stay down!" I hissed, returning fire. In the chaos, I saw Reynolds slip out a side door, his face unreadable. Was he retreating or betraying us? The mercenaries were relentless, their leader barking in Russian about a traitor's price. I dragged Sparrow to a back stairwell, my shoulder burning from a graze. We reached the alley, only to find a black SUV waiting, its driver a rogue CIA agent I recognized. Paul Carter, a desk officer from my division. "Get in, Morgan," he sneered, leveling a pistol. "You're worth more alive, but I'm flexible, the mole." My mind raced, piecing it together. Carter's access to my files, his quiet resentment, the media leak, the cyber attack. He'd sold me out, and now he was cashing in. I shoved Sparrow behind a dumpster, raising my hands to buy time. "You're the hunter," I said, quoting his message. Carter smirked. "Smart girl. Too bad it won't save you." Before he could fire, a shot rang out, and Carter crumpled, blood pooling on the pavement. Reynolds stood at the alley's mouth, his rifle smoking. "Move, Claire!" he shouted. I grabbed Sparrow and the USB, sprinting to Reynolds's exfil van. As we peeled out, Moscow's lights blurring past, I stared at Reynolds, my trust fractured. "You left us in there," I said, my voice low. He met my eyes, unflinching. "I went for backup." "You're welcome." I wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at me. The mole was dead, but the damage was done. Back in D.C., I secured the USB at Langley, its code confirming Sparrow's intel. Nightshade was safe. For now. But the cost was high. 2 agents were dead from the Moscow breach, and Carter's betrayal exposed vulnerabilities in my division. Worse, a Senate inquiry was looming, questioning my ops ethics after Carter's leaks painted me as reckless. I faced it alone, the senator's questions cutting like knives. "Did you authorize unsanctioned ops, Deputy Director?" I held my ground, my voice calm. Every decision saved lives. Check the results. They didn't fire me, but the scrutiny lingered, a shadow on my career. Exhausted, I returned to our D.C. apartment, where Alex waited, with news I dreaded. My family was still there, refusing to leave until we talked. I'd avoided them since Missoula, but there was no escaping now. The living room was a battlefield, Dad standing like a sheriff ready to arrest me, Mom wringing her hands, Ethan pacing, Lily sitting stiffly, her FBI badge pinned to her jacket. Alex hovered by the door, his presence a quiet anchor. Dad spoke first, his voice raw. "You're a deputy director, Claire, running ops, saving lives, and you let us think you were nothing?" Mom's eyes brimmed. "We worried about you, thinking you were struggling when you were..." "This?" Ethan crossed his arms. "No way you're this big shot. Carter's leak said you're a loose cannon." Lily's voice was soft but sharp. "Why didn't you trust me, Claire? I'm your sister." Their words hit like shrapnel, reopening wounds I'd buried. I sank onto the couch, my defenses crumbling. "You want the truth? I stopped sharing because you never believed in me. Dad, you said I'd crash and burn. Mom, you wanted me to quit for a normal life. Ethan, you mocked me as a failure. Lily, you stood by while they tore me down. Every time I tried to tell you, my first op, my case officer promotion, my commendations, you dismissed it. So I built my life in the shadows, where your doubts couldn't touch me." Dad's face paled, his sheriff bravado gone. I didn't know, Claire. I thought you were chasing a dream too big," Mom sobbed. We spread those rumors about your stress because we thought you were hurting. Ethan looked away, his jaw tight. I didn't think you had it in you. I was wrong. Lily leaned forward, her eyes wet. I saw the signs, your confidence, your silences, but I never pushed. I'm sorry, Claire. I should have been there. The air was heavy, years of pain laid bare. But before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Another secure alert. I glanced at the screen, my blood running cold. ShadowNet had launched a new attack, this time targeting my family's digital records, exposing their addresses, bank accounts, everything. A message flashed. You can't hide, Morgan. Pay the price. Carter wasn't the only mole. Someone else was out there, and they were coming for me and everyone I loved. I stood, my voice urgent. You need to leave DC, now. You're not safe here. Dad bristled. I'm not running from some hacker. I cut him off, my deputy director authority kicking in. This isn't a debate. ShadowNet's targeting you because of me. I've got a safe house in Virginia. Alex will take you. Alex nodded, already grabbing his keys. Mom clung to Dad, terrified. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. Lily met my eyes, her voice steady. I'm staying. I'm FBI. I can help. I shook my head. Not this time, Lil. Go with them. As they left, Alex pulled me aside, his voice low. This isn't just about Nightshade, is it? Someone's got a vendetta. I nodded, my mind racing. The media leak, Carter's betrayal, ShadowNet's attacks. It was personal. Someone wanted me destroyed, and they were using my family to do it. Find out who's pulling the strings, I whispered. I'll handle Langley. The next week was a whirlwind. I neutralized ShadowNet's attack, working with NSA to lock down their servers, but the mastermind remained elusive. At a family dinner in the Virginia safe house, Dad stood, his voice heavy with regret. I was wrong, Claire, about everything. You're not just a Morgan. You're the best of us. Mom hugged me, tears streaming. We're proud, honey. We'll listen now. Ethan raised a glass, his smirk gone, to Deputy Director Morgan. I'm sorry I doubted you. Lily squeezed my hand. Let's be sisters again, okay? The apologies were raw, the healing fragile but real. Months later, I was honored publicly for averting ShadowNet's cyber attack, my family in the audience, their faces glowing with pride. Dad called me Deputy Director Morgan, his voice breaking. But the true victory was mine alone, forged in the shadows where I'd learned to define my worth. As I stepped off the stage, a new alert pinged, unknown source, coordinates encrypted. The hunter lives. Someone was still out there, watching. Who and why?